All right. Hey, everybody. Dr. Sean Talbot here. We're going to get going in just a couple of minutes, right at the top of the hour. Let me get all my windows open and get the chat group going. So, like we do every week on this Wellness Wednesday, um, we run it webinar style, and I'm gonna have a window open right over here where you can put in your questions as we're going through in the webinar chat. And if I see a question pop up, I'll try to keep an eyeball on it as I'm going through my slides. And if I see a question pop up that makes sense for me to answer right then, I'll answer it, and we'll try to get through all the questions that pop up in there at one point or another. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about peptides, which is a really, really hot area. So let me get my slides up, and we got this guy. And there, excellent. You should all be able to see my slides now. So I'm going to wait just a minute before we start for real until it turns the top of the hour. So it looks like we just got probably less than a minute left. It's October 1st. It's my wedding anniversary. So today is my 31st wedding anniversary. 31 happy years. So we just went to a really nice dinner, and now I'm back here to spend the rest of my anniversary with you guys. Um, yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure. And those of you who know Julie, you know that she is a saint for putting up with everything. So, all right, just turn the top of the hour. So we're gonna get rolling. So tonight we're gonna talk about this peptide therapy pros and cons. Peptides right now are insane. Like I see questions about them all over the place. So I'm going to try to go through sort of like what are peptides, where do they come from, what do they do, what are the pros and cons, um, you know, how to use them if you decide to use them, what are the different varieties of peptides that are out there, are they really all they're cracked up to be? So those are the things that we're going to go through. If you don't know me, and you're joining in, these Wellness Wednesdays are open calls, so anybody can jump on. This is all my background, blah blah blah. Yeah, PhD in nutritional biochemistry and written a lot of books and things like that. I run a course where I train people as mental wellness coaches. So we talk all about the gut-brain axis and the microbiome and nutrition and exercise and et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go here to doctalbot.com. That's my education site. There's tons and tons of free stuff up there, blogs and videos or links out to videos like my YouTube channel. Um, and then this one, Three Waves Wellness, this is where we're going to start launching some new products. I'm not going to really talk about products tonight. If you're interested in what we are launching in about a week's time, you can go there and just put in your email, and you'll be on the list to get notified when it goes live. But it's gonna be next Friday, so it's coming up. It's coming up pretty quickly here. That's all about me. Part of what we're going to talk about tonight isn't just taking a peptide, because there's all kinds of flavors of peptides out there. We're going to talk about taking them. We're also going to talk about making them because your body makes hundreds and hundreds of its own internal peptides, what are called endogenous meaning internal peptides, versus the ones that you would take out from outside and put into your body, which are called exogenous. Most of those are synthetic, but some of them can be natural, and we'll talk about what those are. And what I really want to get across, like I'm not going to make the decision for you, like should you do peptides or should you not do peptides? I want to give you all the sort of pros and cons and the facts, and then you can make the decision. Some people will choose, I don't want to do that because it's synthetic. I want to do it naturally. I want to lean like 100% on the make side. Other people would go, wait a minute, that's the easy button, taking them. I'm just going to do that. I don't have to do all this other stuff. But I think where most people will land is that there's some advantage to doing both. You might want to take one for a particular area, but then you want to support what that peptide does with other things, with a good exercise regimen or a good nutrition regimen or a nutraceutical stack or something. Okay, so that's kind of what we're gonna try to get through. Because when you look out there, if you hear about peptides, right? Peptides, um, and you look at some of the claims that are made for these things, like Why would you not want to do them, right? They do everything. There's a peptide to help you lose weight. There's a peptide to help you with your metabolism. There's a peptide to grow your muscles. There's a peptide to make you look younger. There's a zillion different peptides out there. And once you start getting into like going down that rabbit hole, it's alphabet soup. And this is the alphabet soup that you might, end up with. It's like, what the heck is going on here, right? It's really, really confusing. And you may ask yourself the question, like, does any of this stuff live up to its hype? So look at these, right? These are all synthetic peptides, injections, that you can order up. There's a lot of mail order companies that do it. There are a zillion clinics now that are like anti-aging peptide therapy clinics. That's neither good nor bad, right? You make the decision by the end of this, 45 minutes or an hour that we're going to talk about this. But look at just like what's on offer. This one's for fat burning. This one's an anti-inflammatory. This one's for your immune system. This one helps your brain. This one is growth hormone. This one is a nootropic, so a brain booster, et cetera, right? And then you can get different cocktails of them. So you can get a whole stack of peptides that are, administered by your peptide guide or your peptide therapist. But what are peptides? So let's start there, just so we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. Peptides are this right here in the middle. This is a peptide. It's a short chain of amino acids. A longer chain of amino acids is going to be a protein. And then a protein isn't just a chain of amino acids. It's not just a string. It also has a three-dimensional structure. So there's a lot to how proteins work that are structural versus just the component amino acids. Same thing goes for peptides. Peptides are, so we can absorb, if we're going to do an oral peptide, we can absorb amino acids, we can absorb short peptides, but as soon as we have a really long peptide, that's going to get digested. So there's a limit to how big a peptide can be and survive the gastrointestinal tract. That's why sometimes the peptide that we want, we can't eat it because it's going to get destroyed. We either have to make it or we have to take it through a route that is going to bypass our digestive and absorption process, and that's where the injections come in. Okay, so but they are messenger. You can see my cursor here. They're messenger molecules. They send a signal, and the signal is, most of the like exciting peptides that most, that people are sort of looking at right now will send a signal to the body to heal something or to grow something or to calm down or to stimulate, or like they're very, very directed signals to do something. So you can see some of them here. General signaling, sometimes it's cell-to-cell signaling. We're not really going to talk too much about that, because there are some immune system signalers, to repair, to ramp your metabolism, like a GLP-1, like we've all heard of those, Ozempic and Wegovy and those sorts of things. There's some for brain function. So they are signals, and that's sort of where it all starts. But from my perspective as a nutritional biochemist, it's all signals, right? That's what I talk about all day long. This aspect of your biochemistry is a signal for your body to do X. This other one is a signal for the body to do Y. It's sort of like, here's a baseball coach, and he's given a signal, right? This and this, and then you wipe it off, and like all those signals to bunt or to steal a base or to whatever. And the reason I have this baseball guy in here is because my Red Sox are playing right now, and I'm missing the game. When I left, they were tied with the Yankees. So I hope you're all sending good vibes to the Red Sox. Boo, boo Yankees. Okay, that's my signal. That's my peptide that's going out there, an anti-Yankee signal. But it's all signals. So peptides are kind of like the signals that they're sending are these very precise, directed, do something signals to a particular target tissue, whether it's your muscles or your fat cells or your brain or whatever. So you can think of this, like the metaphor I like to use is that it's a foreman on a construction site saying specific instructions. Take those 2x4s over there and build a wall out of them. Okay, but there's lots and lots of other signals in the body. There's hormones, which are more like broad announcements to maybe do a lot of different things. And here we might be talking about cortisol and its effect on energy metabolism, or insulin and its effect on blood sugar, or estrogen or testosterone, or there's a whole family of hormones that we can point to that have these very broad signaling effects throughout the entire body. There's neurotransmitters. I talk about neurotransmitters all the time, right? Like my space that I really focus in is mental fitness, and a lot of mental fitness, a lot of how we feel, our mood and our mental focus and our energy levels and things like that come from neurotransmitters like serotonin and happiness, or dopamine and motivation, et cetera, et cetera. Those are more rapid, but they also sort of go away quickly. So they're things that you have to be um, modulating on a regular basis, and that's one of the reasons we focus so much on the gut, because that's a regulator of a lot of these neurotransmitters. There are cytokines. Cytokines are signals that go back and forth between different cells. Cytokine just means cellular signaler. So this is like the language that one cell will use to talk to another cell, and the immune system is a really good example of that, right? The immune system uses lots and lots of different cytokines to communicate all sorts of things, like we're being infected, we're being attacked. We have to rebuild this tissue that's been damaged from a wound or something like that. So cytokines are another signal. And then another one that's important is endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids can be made by your gut. They can be made by your brain. They can be made by lots of tissues in your body, and they're like a regulator of other things. So endocannabinoids can work with neurotransmitters to regulate your level of pain, for example. All right, just one of many things that they do in the body. And there's lots and lots more. So, when somebody says to me, like, what do you think about peptides? I'll go, well, peptides for what? That's the important thing. Peptides for what? Because all it is a signal. It'd be like saying, what do you think about neurotransmitters? Well, I'm a fan. But are we talking about serotonin? Are we talking about dopamine? Are we talking about GABA? Are we talking about what? So it has to be a little more specific. So when we get a little more specific, and we start looking at some of the things that are out there. This BPC is something that helps with tissue repair. So a lot of athletes are interested in this because it can potentially, and I say potentially with a very big asterisk on it, it could help you recover from exercise. It could help you if you have an injury. It could help you bounce back from that injury a little bit better. There's things like growth hormone secretagogues, which are different than taking growth hormone itself. If you were to take growth hormone, which used to be really, really popular among bodybuilders and like power athletes and things like that, you'd get an effect. Your muscles would grow, all your tissues would grow, but you'd be focusing it on your muscles. The downside of that is that now your body is taking this, well, you're taking this hormone from the outside. Your body stops producing your endogenous growth hormone, and it ends up not working. So, you develop a tolerance to it, and etc. That doesn't happen if you're doing a growth hormone secretagogue, which is a peptide that just sends the signal without giving you the actual protein. So there can be some advantages to doing the peptide way versus like a hormonal replacement therapy kind of a way, because they have these very, very targeted effect. They have very rapid outcomes. That's why people like them. You get your injection and you see something happening. It's not always a good thing, which I'm going to get into in a second. And there's ways that we can sort of modulate that. Here's the cons. They're almost always synthetic. There are a couple of key examples of some natural ones, that I'll point out as we get through the slides. They're almost always injections for the reason that I said before. If we ate them, they're these, they're still small proteins, but they're still big enough where they're going to get digested and degraded. And as soon as you chop that peptide, doesn't work anymore. You just broke the signal. So it's not going to have its signaling effect. It's not like you can digest it and then absorb it and then put it back together the same way on the other side in your bloodstream. It doesn't work that way. So you have to inject it so that you get around that digestive aspect. There's a huge regulatory gray area. So some of these are approved drugs, meaning they've gone through the whole FDA approval process and they've been approved for something. good example that we're going to talk more about is the GLP-1 agonist, the Wegovy's and Ozempic kind of drugs of the world. Those are approved for diabetes. They're approved for obesity, but once they're on the market, they can be used off-label by anybody who is licensed to prescribe. So that'd be, in most states, that's an MD or a DO. In some states, there's other ability to prescribe, but you'd have to be able to prescribe that for a usage that hasn't been FDA approved, right? That's allowed. So there, that could be good, could be bad. It really kind of depends on whose hands it's in. Do you trust that prescriber to be using something in a way that hasn't been through the full FDA regulatory process for these fairly new medications? And a lot of them are not approved for anything. They are sold as research chemicals, right? That's what the packaging will say, is that these are research chemicals. They're not dietary supplements. They're not approved drugs. They're not generally recognized as safe. They're good luck. It's sort of one of those things. And pros and cons to that. Long-term safety unknown. There's some. I'm not gonna like. I have a big question mark after this. I'm not gonna like underline this, but there's a lot of chit chat about some of these growth peptides that will like grow your muscles, for example, that they might be able to reactivate things like dormant tumors. There may be because they're these grow signals. They may grow cell masses in the body, but we don't know. So because there's no research in those areas, or not a lot of research. Okay, so that's kind of a quick view of sort of pros and cons. Um, uh, Peptides aren't new, right? They're having a moment now, and lots of people are talking about them online and social media and things like that. But peptides have been around for a long time. Here are some that you probably know of, that you've probably heard of before: Trulicity, Victoza, Ozempic, etc. They're multi-billion-dollar drugs in those particular categories. Here's a much longer list. You probably don't know most of the ones that are listed on this list. Some of them are for, cancer and hyperparathyroidism and short bowel syndrome and things like that. But there's a big market in peptides, and most of these are injections for the reasons that we said before. Okay, so it's not really a new category, but a lot of people are sort of waking up to the fact that they can get them fairly easily. These are some of the ones that you probably have heard of if you've lifted up the lid to say, like, well, what are peptides all about? You've seen that you can get from a lot of mail order places. You can get GLP-1 agonists, semaglutide, tirzepatide. These are the ones that we're going to talk about in a little bit, which are the weight loss drugs, is how most people are applying them right now. There are these ones, sermorelin and tesmorelin. These are muscle mass increasers. So they are approved, like I said before, the GLP-1 agonists are approved for diabetes and obesity. So they're on the market and can be openly prescribed for other stuff. So you're seeing them being prescribed for addiction, migraine, autoimmune system, PCOS, a whole raft of conditions. But they're not. Let me just give you my biochemical perspective on this. GLP-1 peptides don't do any of that. They will show benefits in people who are suffering from these sorts of things, including a whole bunch of inflammatory kinds of conditions, because they work on diabetes and obesity, which are, if you're diabetic, your blood sugar is out of control. That's leading to a whole host of metabolic problems. Same thing with obesity, a whole host of metabolic problems. So you've got blood sugar problems and a biochemical situation that we call glycation, where your cells are getting damaged. You have oxidation, another kind of cellular damage. You have inflammation. Uh, so your cells are in disarray. They're being damaged in a multitude of biochemical ways. If you use a GLP-1 agonist to solve diabetes and solve obesity, you also solve in large measure glycation, oxidation, inflammation, and that makes all the trillions of cells in your body healthier, and that's going to have an effect on whatever else might ail you. Okay, so like it's very much like the biochemical dominoes game that we're talking about here. It's not that GLP-1 peptides have a direct effect on those particular conditions. That's why there's no approval for those sort of peripheral conditions. Okay, so muscle mass enhancers, immune system kinds of drugs. So these are approved by the FDA for one thing, but they're being used off label for lots of other things, right? So you'll see a lot of peptides in that way. These guys, all these chemical structures, are some of the really popular ones that you're seeing at like anti-aging clinics. Um, and there's look at the evidence here. There's really no evidence except for, in my previous life, I was a sports nutritionist, right? U.S. Olympic training centers, U.S. ski team, U.S. Track and Field Association, et cetera, right? So I'm very well versed in doping, not how to dope, but I'm very well versed in the fact that we needed to keep our athletes from taking things that would cause them to test positive, right? And a lot of dietary supplements have the potential to be contaminated with certain different things. So WADA here stands for the World Anti-Doping Association. So this one, the BPC that I talked about before for tissue repair and wound healing and things like that, that is prohibited in international athletics. If you're an Olympic athlete, NCAA athlete, professional athlete, that's going to be a no-no for you. And then other ones like this, which are also tissue repair kinds of things. But look at all these other ones. Like there's so many other ones. Telomerase activator. This is going to help with anti-aging, supposedly. Stimulating collagen, growth hormone mimetic. Actin is a muscle protein. So you can see that some of these would be potentially really interesting, right? Wouldn't it be great if I could be thinner and have better muscle mass, and be smarter because I have something that's a brain booster, and I can get one for my skin too, so I can be better looking. Everybody wants to be thinner and stronger and better looking and smarter. And if you can get that from an injection, why? And you can afford it. These are not inexpensive too, by the way. But if you can afford it, why would you not do that? I'm going to try to give you some reasons why you might not want to. But before I get into that, let's talk about some that are actually natural. So here's some of the synthetics. We just talked about these. There's a lot of natural peptides that we can use. We'll talk in a minute about peptides that we can make, natural peptides that we can make ourselves. But you probably watching this, you probably already do something like collagen peptides, or milk peptides like casein or whey. This one at the bottom is really interesting. This has been on the market for a few years now. I almost used this in a product at my last company, and we decided to not at the last minute. It's not inexpensive. It's something called Peptistrong. I actually use this. I take it as a capsule. The downside is that the dosing of it is four pretty large capsules every time you want to use it. So I use it. I don't use it every single day. I'll use it before a workout, like a weightlifting workout. I'll use it on the days when I have a really intense endurance workout. I'll use it on days where I want to, enhance my recovery and things like that. It's a peptide, a muscle growth signaling peptide that is extracted from a fava bean. It's made by a company called Neuritas in Ireland. I've met with those guys. I've talked to some of the scientists that work there. It seems pretty legit, um, enough for me to try it, right? So that's me doing an experiment on myself, I guess, right? It's regulated as a dietary supplement. You can find it from number of different companies. Uh, uh, I have some friends who have friends and colleagues who have started a company where one of their main products is based on this fava bean extract called Peptistrong, and it does some cool things. It enhances muscle protein synthesis, it reduces muscle breakdown, and it improves recovery. So the benefits here sound a lot like the benefits here of this injection. So Is one going to be more effective than the other? They've never been studied head to head. You might get some people who would be like, I don't want to do the injections. I think I'm going to go with the supplement. You might get other people who go, supplement, maybe the drug would be more effective. Maybe I'm going to take a chance and see how that goes. Maybe you would want to try to use both of them together. I wouldn't recommend that, and I'll talk about that in just a second. I do recommend peptides and nutraceuticals at the same time, but what I try to do is get them so that they're not overlapping with each other. I want to get them so they're complementary to each other, and I'll give you a few examples of those as we go through here. Okay, so this is the one we all know about. This is the one that is taking the world by storm, glucagon-like peptide 1, or GLP-1, or GLP-1. There's a lot of ways to say it. When you inject yourself with this, it has an effect on the pancreas. So your insulin goes up, your glucagon goes down. This insulin is going to help you with your blood sugar control. This is why it was first approved as an anti-diabetes drug. It also has an effect on your brain. It tells your brain that you have more satiety, which is a fullness signal, and that you have less appetite. So it's both an appetite suppressant and a satiety stimulator. So it makes you feel less hungry and more full. Those sound like the same thing, but they're actually different signals in the body. There are things that can be just satiety enhancers, or just appetite suppressants, and this one is both. They're actually peptides that do satiety reduction. It makes you less full. Um, and they use that in the hospital sometimes when people have something called cachexia, which is like you don't have an appetite, and because you don't have an appetite, you're not eating, and because you're not eating, you're wasting away, and that's a bad thing, right? So they give you an anti-satiety drug so that your hunger goes up and your fullness goes down, and you get hungry and you eat that horrible hospital meal that you didn't have an appetite for before, but now at least you have some fuel on board to maintain yourself while you're in the hospital. And the other thing that GLP-1s do is that they change your gut motility. So it slows your motility and slows your gastric emptying. So this is probably the biggest side effect of these drugs for most people. Your food doesn't move through your gastrointestinal tract. It just sits there. It moves slower, but the sensation is that, ugh, I feel kind of bloated after eating anything. And so you put all these effects together, and your blood sugar's being controlled. That's a good thing for your overall health, but it's also a good thing for your fat burning. You're not hungry, so you're not eating as much. And anything that you do eat makes you feel fuller for longer, and sometimes makes you feel sick and nauseous and bloated, and so you're less likely to eat just because it's not an enjoyable experience anymore. Okay, so like you put all those three things together, and this is why people can lose a ton of weight when they're taking a GLP-1 agonist. Okay, a lot of people have a misconception that GLP-1 drugs are just a drug version of the same thing that your body is doing. And that's kind of a misunderstanding of how it works. So what you're seeing here is here's your gastrointestinal tract, right? Here's your stomach, here's your intestines, and we're doing a little cross section of your intestines so you can see what this looks like. This is your intestinal lining, if you're looking at my cursor. Each one of these cells is an individual intestinal cell, what we call an enterocyte. So this is a blown up version of your gut lining. Um, Anytime we eat food, the things in food, the amino acids, the fats, the sugars, the carbs, all the stuff that's in that food naturally increases GLP-1. They all have different signals, right? Sugars signal GLP-1 through a different pathway than fats and different than amino acids, but they all sort of gang up to increase GLP-1. And then GLP-1 is going to have the effects that I just showed you. Your natural GLP-1 that your intestines are making in response to food are going to do the same things. It's going to tell the pancreas, give us some insulin so we can get this sugar out of our blood and into the cells. It's going to tell the brain, that we just ate. We're not hungry anymore. So, ramp down our appetite and ramp up our fullness. It's going to tell it's going to tell the rest of the gastrointestinal tract, hey, there's some food here. Let's slow everything down so that we can digest it properly and absorb all those wonderful nutrients. So it does that. But it does it at, like, if you can see me, it does it at this level, like a on a scale of 1 to 100. Let's say it does it at a 10. Whereas when you inject, it bypasses some of the machinery here. It bypasses absorption. It bypasses the liver. It bypasses circulation. Well, it doesn't bypass circulation because you're doing the injection. But when you inject, you're getting a much higher level of a synthetic version that has a much longer half-life. And so it hits the pancreas like a sledgehammer. It hits the gut motility like a sledgehammer. It hits the brain like a sledgehammer. So, like, equating what's in these injection pens with what your gut is producing is not really apples to apples. It's so if your natural GLP-1 is a 10 on a scale of 0 to 100, these drugs are like a 90. Right. It is a big, big difference. And so in the nutraceutical world, when these drugs first started coming onto the market, and even now, you see a lot of companies trying to say, oh, I've got a natural GLP-1 stimulator over here, and here's a pill that does it, here's a drink that does it, here's a candy bar that does it, whatever. And it's not the right comparison. In the product that I'm launching next week, I have an Akkermansia strain of bacteria. That is one that we know, like, is very well clinically validated to elevate GLP-1, improve gut integrity. It reduces leaky gut, and it modulates metabolism. So you have a metabolic effect, blood sugar control and insulin sensitivity and all that kind of stuff. But it's a whole different order of magnitude of what these drugs are doing. Okay, so like that, I think like needs to be said. There's a lot of companies that are out there saying like almost positioning their supplement or their nutrition product as like a natural version of Ozempic, and it's not the right comparison. It's like comparing a skateboard to a Lamborghini, right? It's just a different magnitude of what's going on there. Okay, not to say that this approach is bad, right? If somebody is not in the category of wanting to go and get that synthetic peptide, then by all means support your gut integrity and enhance your natural signaling and all that kind of stuff. That's my sweet spot. So I definitely think that's a good way to go, but it's not apples to apples. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So how do you um, uh, produce things naturally? So endogenous peptides, the ones that we're going to make versus the exogenous that we're going to take, they're made all over the body. They're made in the gut, they're made in the brain, they're made in the immune tissues. Some examples like GLP-1 that we just talked about, it's made in the gut. BPC, that injectable one that is banned by the World Anti-Doping Association, that's naturally made in the stomach. That's where it was discovered, and then now there's a synthetic version of it, but that's originally where it was a body protection compound. And then endorphins are made in the brain. These are natural painkillers, and they're peptide signaling molecules. So we can stimulate those with diet. We can stimulate them with exercise. We can stimulate them with sleep quality and getting you back in a proper circadian rhythm. I actually write about some of those programs in the mental fitness book, but microbiome activity seems to be the way that we can really tweak it and really modulate it and master if we get the gut right, the gut can be the source of a lot of these signaling peptides. And the advantage there, which is what I'm going to sort of wrap up with, is that when you do that, you're taking advantage of this, how should I say it, like matrix effect, where some of the signal comes from the natural peptides, some of the signals come from the neurotransmitters, some of the signal comes from the cytokines, some of the signal comes from the endocannabinoids, right? You get a much more like orchestrated uh, set of signals. And in some cases, that is actually what you want versus just like a loud signal on one thing like a peptide. Okay. So And again, those can be used in conjunction with each other if they're done in a very sort of precise way. Um, so here's a laundry list of all the ones that I could think of, hundreds of different peptides that are made across multiple tissues. So here's some in the brain and nervous system. Here's some for the muscle and connective tissue system, the gut and the microbiome. And look at a lot of these are appetite signals: GLP-1, PYY, CCK. There's ones that regulate vascular tone and blood pressure and things like that. And then there's a whole bunch in the immune system, which would be great if if you're battling cancer, or you have an autoimmune system disease or something like that. So those in a very specialized case, those can be wonderfully effective. Another way of looking at it, right? And what they do is like you can go at it from the perspective of like, what benefit am I looking for? So you might be looking to regulate your food intake. You might be looking to boost your metabolism. You might be looking to modulate your mood or your mental focus or your stress resilience or something like that. And some of those might be in the gut, some of those might be in the brain, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so, nutraceutical support of this. Remember, nutraceuticals aren't going to replace the peptide. They're just magnitude of difference in their signaling strength. So, like whatever metaphor you want, Lamborghini versus a skateboard, a bazooka versus a pea shooter. Like you choose the one that works best for you, right? But one's really, really strong, one is less strong. But the less strong one, this is when I'm trying to describe a pharmaceutical approach versus a dietary supplement like an herbal approach. The example that I like to give is that the pharmaceutical is like a sledgehammer. It's a really big signal on one thing, and sometimes you want that. Sometimes that gives you side effects, but sometimes you want that big signal. Whereas an herbal or a nutraceutical approach is like 1,000 fly swatters, right? Each one of those signals is just a little bit, a little bit. They're more like modulating or nudging or tweaking, but you have a lot of them happening at the same time. And a lot of times in our metabolism, that's what we want. We want a balancing effect, which is something that we can go for a long time. So sledgehammer, big fast effect versus fly swatters, a more moderate, more holistic, but long-term sort of an effect. And you can do that with amino acids. One that I like, all the ones in the red are ones that I've done a lot of work in, and actually have an impact on the product that we're launching next week. So things like theanine, phytoglycogens, which are sort of like a next generation kind of a prebiotic. Different probiotic strains. There's specific probiotic strains that will make different kinds of neurotransmitters or different kinds of hormones or whatever signaling molecule we're talking about. We talked about acromantia already. There's a whole new category of biotics hitting the market now that are called phytobiotics. So prebiotics are the fibers that feed the bacteria in your gut. Probiotics are the bacteria. Postbiotics are they're hard to define. They sometimes can be dead bacteria. They sometimes can be things that the bacteria would produce, like a short chain fatty acid or something like that. Phytobiotics are plant extracts that have effects across the gut brain axis. So things like phytopeptides. What we're finding is that some of the herbs that we use to help with mental focus or energy or motivation or something like that are not antioxidant compounds. They're plant peptides that are having signaling effects in the brain. So these, for whatever reason, when we eat them, they do get up to the brain, or they at least get the signal up to the brain. So it might be, remember what I said before about like like a peptide, a longer protein chain might get chopped up. How could it get chopped up and still have its signaling effects? Well, it's not getting up to the brain as a full-on peptide, but it might be signaling in the gut. It might be signaling your vagus nerve, and that electrical signal is getting up there. It might be signaling part of your immune system, and your immune system is then carrying that signal up to your brain. So that, to be perfectly honest with you, is a little bit still to be determined. But we know if we give this herb, we get that sort of a mental function, like mental focus function, or we give this other herb and we get a calming effect, or we give that other herb and we get a sleep quality effect. So that some of that signaling is peptide mediated, and sometimes we call those phytopeptides because they're coming from plants, and phyto means plant. And then lifestyle synergy. A lot of these peptides, whether they're ingestible or they're injectable, really, really benefit from exercise and sleep and good nutrition, right? So if you have a good eat, move, sleep program while you're on a lot of these peptides, especially the ones that are weight loss or muscle building or tissue repairing, those sorts of things. If you can have a good base foundation lifestyle program, they work better. And there's no research on that, but just observations show that, people who take the peptide and then just sort of sit back and wait for it to work don't get nearly the magnitude of benefits as people who are adhering to other aspects of, prudent diet and good sleep quality and, good physical activity and things like that. So in our course, in the course that I teach for certified mental wellness coaches, I give them as part of the curriculum they go through, flashcards that provide nutraceutical stacks for each of the different categories of peptide therapies. Because my coaches, like if you're a certified mental wellness coach, you're unless you're already a prescriber, right? We have physicians who have gone through the program, but most of the people who come through the program are, they're personal trainers or dietitians or life coaches, or there's something where they might be certified, they might be licensed, but they're not usually a prescriber. So they're not prescribing peptides to their clients, but they might have clients that are getting peptides from somebody else, whoever that prescriber is, and we want to be able to say, oh, you're on a GLP-1. Let's give you a nutraceutical stack that's going to help you preserve your lean mass, right? Keep your muscle, because when you're on a GLP-1 like an Ozempic, one of the big downsides is that you're losing fat, but you're also losing tons of muscle. So like a third of the weight that you lose is probably muscle mass, and that's really bad. It's really bad for your metabolism. It's really bad for your weight regain after you go off the drug. It's really detrimental to your overall longevity. It's like losing muscle mass is a terrible, terrible thing. So one of the things we do is say, let's give a stack of nutrients to help you, maintain that lean mass. And then, et cetera, for each of the big categories. If it's wound healing, here's what we're trying to do. If it's hormone balance, if it's whatever, you guys get the idea. So those are things that we provide, in our curriculum. So just kind of summing up, taking versus making the comparison. You can read all these, right? Injections versus making it from a multitude of tissues. Rapid and short-lived is the take module or mode of action, whereas making is slower, but it's more sustainable. It's sort of like a lifestyle intervention that you can get yourself into. The risks, I guess, would be a big red flag for a lot of people. Regulatory issues, we don't know. A lot of these things are off-label, or they're research chemicals. They're not regulated at all. Unknown safety, whereas making it is perfectly safe because we're doing that with nutrients. The synergy here, targeted effect only. So if you know that you only need this one thing, then a peptide therapy might be the right thing for you. If you know, like I have this tennis elbow that will not heal, I'm going to get an injection of BPC 157 to see if it's going to accelerate that tissue healing, then great. But if you're taking it because you're working out every day and you want to have better recovery every day, that's probably not the right usage for it. And you would want to go for something like this that is more of a systemic multi-tissue benefit, so that your muscles are recovering and your heart is recovering and your blood vessels are recovering and your tendons and your ligaments and your joints and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then we already talked about prescription or gray market sourcing versus nutrition, microbiome balance, lifestyle is sort of mainstream thing. So I'm gonna end with a metaphor of building a house, right? Just to sort of bring this all together. And then I've got two more summary slides after, which is just like all the points on one slide for you. So think of it like this: you're building your house or you're remodeling your house, and a peptide signal is going to be a directive, right? It's like the foreman of the crew saying, shingle the roof, build the retaining wall, right? It's a very precise do this kind of an order, if you will. Okay. But the and that's great. Like that's what the signal is. Um, if you don't have the building materials on board, is the house built? Like you can't shingle the roof unless the house is built and the roof is on, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Have the shingles even been delivered, or are they still at Home Depot? Do we have the right bricks for the retaining wall? Has the mortar been mixed yet? Like those sound like silly little things, but those are really, really important. And in the body, that would be, do you have the right exoskeleton for the muscle to be built if that's the signal that you got? Do you have the right basement membrane for your collagen to be built around the tissue healing peptide that you just took, right? So that's not an insignificant theoretical sort of a question, right? You need to have the right infrastructure for that peptide signal to act in the right way. And there's ways that we can make sure that you have that infrastructure of the rest of the house so that the shingles can be put on a solid foundation. Let me move this over so you can see this. On the other side, if we're going to make peptides, all those different signals happen in a package, if you will, right? It's all served up on a silver platter. When you go, for example, you say, I'm going to do this intervention. I'm going to take this supplement to do something in my gut. I'm going to take an Akkermansia, or I'm going to take a strain specific probiotic that's going to make neurotransmitters and peptides and anti-inflammatory cytokines and, happy endocannabinoids and that kind of thing. So all at once, you're getting signals to mix the cement, pour the foundation, frame the house, grade the landscape. Everything is ready to go so that then when that peptide signal comes in and says shingle the roof and build the retaining wall, you're ready, right? So that's the difference. This is faster. This signal gets across, but you darn well better be sure that all the rest is in line. Otherwise, that signal is going to be landing on shaky ground. Whereas this is a longer, more gradual, but more holistic proposition when you're doing it that way. So it really not what that doesn't mean one's better than the other, but they're different and they need to be considered with whatever decision you're going to make. So peptides may be the foreman shouting commands, but you still need the materials like amino acids. You still need the energy, which is the ATP machinery, so your cells can make their energy currency. The tools are the enzymes and the cofactors. The supervisors are the hormones and the receptors. And we could continue on this metaphor all the rest of the night. Or the house doesn't get built, or more likely, it gets built in a really sloppy, shoddy way where it's not structurally sound. And this is one of the anecdotal problems with a lot of peptide therapy clinics, if you will. Some are probably amazing, right? And that's great if you have access to a really, really good one. But if you do the wrong signal and it doesn't take, so to speak, the way you want it to, then you're going to have to come with another signal and then another signal and then another signal. It's the equivalent of like what we call polypharmacy in the pharmaceutical world, where you get one drug to solve this problem, and then that causes a side effect and you need another drug for that, and then that causes something else, you need another drug for that, and it ends up being like biochemical pharmaceutical whack-a-mole, which is called polypharmacy. You're taking a multitude of drugs, right? You can go down that route with peptides in the same way. Okay, so I guess the moral of the story is make sure you have a solid foundation in all those different ways. And here's some just summing up how you make your own peptides. So where can I put this so it's out of the way? Exercise, diet, sleep, and especially gut health can modulate all these signals that I've talked about already. Some of which are peptide signals, some of which are other kinds of signals. I said this. I've got a new product launching next week. So here's the one pitch that I'll make. It's around gut brain health. It helps with resilience and mood and motivation and focus and energy and sleep quality all in one product. It's something I've been working on for a long, long time. It's something that couldn't have been done until very, very recently because some of the ingredients are new to the market. We'll be the first ones to launch them. It works on neurotransmitters and hormones and endocannabinoids and cytokines and peptides. Basically, all these signals of good health, all in one product. Um, it's based on next generation science, like again, stuff that wasn't around before, and it's not MLM. I really didn't want to go and do an MLM product again. Not that that's necessarily bad, but it wasn't the right thing that I wanted to do right now. But we do have an affiliate program, and it's a really good affiliate program. It's better than any of the ones that you're going to see out there. And these are all brands that you know: AG1, Seed, Groons, Ritual, Momentous. Ours is better. And it's lifetime attribution. So if you're someone who is building a business in the natural product space, you're a coach, you're a trainer, you're just a business person, this is something you definitely want to look at because the ingredients we're using really can't be found anywhere else. We've got some patented ingredients, the patents that I hold. We've got some new to the market ingredients. It really is something special, I think. And lifetime after attribution. If you get a customer through your affiliate link, anytime they buy a product for the rest of their life, you get a commission on it. So go here, Three Waves Wellness. You can put your email in when it launches next week. You'll get all the information and you can see if you're interested or if you're not interested. So here are the key takeaways. Peptides are signaling molecules. They're synthetic and they're quick, but they have a very narrow focus. Like that is the signal you're getting, and you're not getting other signals outside of that. Natural is more holistic for sure. It's probably more sustainable because it's a longer proposition, if you will, but doesn't work as quickly. Nutraceuticals and lifestyle can boost your own endogenous production, and right there is the secret of this, right? The right nutraceutical stack can be supportive of a peptide therapy and probably make that peptide therapy a lot more effective, less side effects, more holistic because you get this strong signal and then this sort of wrap around of the supporting signals. And the experience is probably going to be better. So you can level up your biochemistry from the inside out. But it has to be personalized. So if you do go down this road of exploring peptide injections, or using any of the oral peptides that are available out there, right? It has to be personalized. So work with somebody that you trust, work with somebody that has good experience, work with somebody who's done it before and knows some of this peripheral biochemistry that I'm referring to. These stacks are going to vary by age, by training load, by primary peptide goals, right? So like one peptide therapy might be around metabolism, another one might be around neurological, another one might be around tissue repair. And so those are all going to be very, very specific and very, very individualized, and they have to be customized. Sequence and safety, I mentioned all of these already. Peptides are precise, nutraceuticals are supportive. Oh, I wanted to mention this. So if you're doing something that is like a GLP-1 peptide, like a drug, you don't want to come on top of that with a bunch of GLP-1 supporting or GLP-1 signaling nutrients, right? So this is where you would say, wait a minute, I'm already getting my GLP-1 signal from my Ozempic. I don't need it from my berberine and my this and this and this. Okay. Same thing if you're doing like a growth hormone secretagogue, growth hormone signaling peptide. You don't want to then come in with a bunch of the amino acid stacks that are also growth hormone signalers, like arginines and et cetera, et cetera. You would want to do something separate from that is supportive of the other pathways. Don't try to stack nutraceutical signals and peptide signals all on the same pathway, right? Do them, make it more holistic. That's the name of the game. And then this last one, formula synergy. Make sure you're using good nutraceuticals. If you're going to pay for a peptide that's very expensive, don't go and try to save $2 by getting a generic ashwagandha or a generic pine bark or a generic whatever. Okay. If you're going to pay for the peptides, pay for the good stuff in terms of the branded ingredients that have the good research and the good purity and the good quality control and all that kind of stuff. And so with that, that's peptides. I saw a couple questions come up into the chat, so I'm going to go and see if there's something in here I can answer. Um, so let's see. This is are peptides also dependent on the total environment? Oh, environmental factors. Yeah, yeah, of course. So, yeah, so Judy, you probably put this in right before I answered all of that. So you're asking the exact question. Like that's the kernel of what I wanted to get across today is that if you take a peptide and the rest of your biochemical internal environment is not where it needs to be, then that peptide is, in a sense, going to be spinning its wheels. That signal is going to have nowhere to go because it doesn't have the right building blocks. It doesn't have the right the other signals. It doesn't have the right biochemical internal environment to exert the signal that it's trying to send. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get across. So it's a big area. It's a hot area. There's a lot of talk about it online. Hopefully, this helps clear it up for you guys. Anybody who's considering it, or if you look at that and go, well, that's maybe not for me. I'm going to try to go the natural route. There's ways that we can amplify your peptide signaling through natural means as well. Okay. So I appreciate you guys jumping on. Go check out threewaveswellness.com. All it is right now is a placeholder page. So you can put in your name and your email, and we can let you know all the good stuff when we announce it next Friday at noon is what we're doing. Okay. So hopefully I'll see you guys then. Bye bye.